God. How good is the Toxic Avenger, ladies and gentlemen? I mean, if ever there's a movie that was a quintessential Beyond Fest movie for the People's Republic like yourself, it is the Toxic Avenger. It is insane. Sandemus, how are you doing? Okay, you're still alive. No comment. You have mops. Okay, that's fantastic. So, you know, as I'm watching the film, I'm thinking the person who made this is a madman. And then I'm also thinking, no, the person that made this is a genius. And so I think the only way to define Mr. Macon Blair is he is a mad genius. So, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the writer and the director of The Toxic Avenger. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Macon Blair.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for being here. Thank you. A lot of fun.
My God.
Oh, I got a seat there.
So many questions.
Sure.
But I want to start with, so what exactly happened in your childhood?
Lots of things, man.
Definitely. So, I mean, this is completely delirious. It's completely insane. At what point did you say, I have to make this version of the Toxic Avenger?
I saw the Toxic Avenger when I was very young, at a very appropriate age. You know, I was about like, it would have been 86 or 87 or something. Saw it on video. In those days, it was you see what's on the cover, and there's this mutant with a fucking tutu and a mop, and you're like, what the fuck is this? And so we brought it home, and it became this thing with my friends that we were not really supposed to be watching, and it got imprinted on our brains very early. It was not something that I was like, oh, I want to remake this at some point, but the sense of humor, the kind of P.T. Barnum, go for broke, anything for a laugh sense of humor in the original. And then also just what we didn't really have a word for it, which was, it seemed like they just picked up a camera and went and made a movie in their yard with their friends in the movie. At that point, I was like, I loved movies, but it was all Star Wars and E.T. and stuff. And this felt like something that people had made in their backyard. And I mean that with love. And it really influenced, oh shit, we can do that too. You just gotta get some dudes together in a mask and some goop, and you can go make a movie. And that's what we were ripping off while we were learning how to make movies on VHS, was trauma movies, Monty Python, and George Romero. And so this is kind of what we stole from growing up.
And it's all in there, and then so scroll forward. So you're watching that in the 80s, but then scroll forward to now. At what point did you become involved with this version of Toxic Avenger?
Alex, the producer on this movie, Alex Garcia, asked me if I had a take on it, and at first, honestly, I was kind of like, nah, they did it, you know, like what's left to be done. And then I thought, and the thing was that like I had really written a bunch of spec scripts that were, it was, you know, gore and guts, kind of wearing your heart on your sleeve, a kind of sentimentality, almost like a warmth, very R-rated, all this kind of like checklist of ingredients. And it occurred to me that like, oh wait, if ever there was a property or an IP that not only could withstand, but would demand silliness, absurdity, gore, guts, heart, love, like all this stuff at the same time, it seemed like Toxie was the one to do it. So I thought like, oh, this could be a way to circle back to that.
And did you feel a weight of responsibility because you're taking on? I mean, Toxie was so informative.
Absolutely.
It affected so many of us when this came out, and a huge cult following, and really kind of launched trauma and put trauma on the map. So did you feel that way? You were like, can I actually take this on?
No, that's why my initial response was no. Like, why would you? Because it's been done, and then I thought like this could be a way to kind of in a larger scale bring people into that same sort of storytelling, which is totally absurd and over the top, and also kind of warm, and also gross, and also funny. All these sort of contradictory things at the same time. Yeah, it was a huge weight of responsibility, because you know that it's got this huge fan base out there, of which I was one of them, and so you don't want to do something that feels like it veers totally afar from what the original was. At the same time, there's all these people that maybe have not heard of it, and you want to make something that's going to be cool for them too, you know?
So, as you're thinking about that, and I want to talk about the casting and Peter in particular,
Yeah.
because I remember when this was announced, and then Dinklage was announced. It used to be my mom. It used to be my mom. When Dinklage was announced, as part of the reboot, it was like, okay, now this is like a real spin. Did you, when you were writing the script, did you write it with Peter in mind, or were you like, I just need a completely different spin on who is Toxic Avenger?
More the latter. I didn't write it specifically with Peter in mind, but I did know that we had about 20 minutes at the top of the movie where, once the makeup comes on and it gets into running around and smashing shit up, that it's sort of like, you kind of need to be on board with this guy by that time. So he's got about 20 minutes to kind of lure people in. And so we knew that we wanted an actor who could do this thing that was, on one hand, sympathetic and warm, and you could draw him in. On the other hand, was very funny and also kind of dark and had some rage in it. All of these things simultaneously, that we wanted to sort of check those boxes at the beginning. And we got very lucky that Peter wanted to do it. And then once he was on board as Winston, then everything sort of like fell into place subsequently.
And was he a fan of the original Toxic Avenger, or when he got the script, was like, what's this?
Yeah, no, he was aware of both.
Yeah.
He was aware of the original, and he was also kind of like, what's this? Like, is it like crazy and sort of weird on purpose? And I was like, yeah, like that's kind of the thing, but it's sort of like you have to like lean into it and own it, and it will be warm and heartfelt in spite of that or because of that. And he got down with it really quickly, but we just got lucky with him.
I mean, you talk about owning it. Taylor, she sells it so hard. She's made like she's perfect. Yeah. She plays it straight, like she delivers. I mean, she's the perfect casting in this film. What was she like as you were filming it? Because it feels like she brought totally her own thing to this.
She did, and honestly, I don't know if she was into the original or not, but at any rate, it doesn't matter. The tone of the original was sort of something that we talked about, but it was really about like, hey, look, the rest of this movie is going to be totally berserk and over the top and very cartoonish in a deliberate way, but you have to play it kind of straight and be kind of deadpan and like you're the cool one in this. And so she got into that very quickly. I don't know if she was using the original as a reference or not. I kind of felt like we don't even have to get into that, but just like you play it real and then it will be funny, in the margin.
That's the thing. It's the straightness of her character, and that she's totally straight with it. Like she buys in and sells it hard.
Yeah.
She ends up giving you actually so many of the laughs that are in the film. It's awesome. And then on the other extreme of the spectrum, Kevin Bacon.
Yeah.
Good job.
Which was the same conversation, but in reverse. He was like, I'm always getting offered, they want me to play a corrupt cop, or I'm like this like serious dude. So initially we were like, it's the villain, and he was like, no, I don't want anything to do with it. And we were like, no, it's a villain, but it's really stupid. Like, okay, hold on, wait a minute. And then he kind of got into it, and I was like, the whole point is that you will be able to go very far afield from what you're ever. What we've seen you doing lately, and like I don't know, but I think it was delightful for him because he's a funny dude.
Yeah.
You maybe don't think of him as like in the same way that you think of like Will Ferrell or people like that, where like, oh, they're a comedy actor, but he's very funny, and maybe he doesn't get as often a chance to do it, and I don't know, he seemed to have a great time because it was just like, was that too big? And I was like, nah, dude, go bigger. Is it bigger than that? And I was like, yeah, man, all the fucking way. away. And he was like, oh, this is great. So it was sort of permission for him to have a good time, and I think he did. So yeah.
And then the other person in the cast I want to talk about, a hometown hero, true legend. He is unrecognizable in this, and the internet lit up when those photos came out. Elijah Wood, you've obviously worked you a fan of Batman Returns? What's going on?
Seen it once or twice,
Yeah.
a couple of times. Yeah, no, absolutely. That one and Rocky Horror. But it was really, we were talking about like Peter Sellers type stuff, like disappearing and sort of not being not having any of the sort of actor baggage that you have on a screen where they've seen you in previous things, and just being able to, and same thing with Kevin, just be able to disappear in it and be really weird and funny, and just sort of in a weird way let the makeup take the lead and then just kind of follow up along that. I don't know, it seemed like it was fun.
So the thing that's important though is they don't just look crazy and act crazy, but you've given them the ability to do that, and it's in the script. The script is insane, and it's so fast. There's so many jokes in there. There are things, and it's crazy sitting at the back hearing it, like with the mix, with the sound mix. There's like lines that are hidden over there that are in the background. It's nuts. It's so fast. And you talk about it almost being cartoonish. There's some slapstick in there. It feels almost like Mad Magazine in parts, but it's so fast. The script of this thing, how long did it take to write? Did you go through a series of different drafts and just keep layering in and layering and layering? Because it's just so dense.
Not really in the writing process. It was just kind of like that. The script was the scenes and where the people needed to go and who we needed to cast. As we were shooting it, then it became like, whoever's got an idea for like, you want to add something into this? And then when we got into post-production, which was so much fun with the editors, where it was just kind of like, it became like a Phil Spector sort of wall of sound. If there's a moment of silence, what can we put in there? And so there's always somebody off camera, there's a little something, on the bottom of the screen if it's a newscaster or something like that. But just trying to sort of like, really to make ourselves laugh. And so in the room, a lot of the time was just kind of like, would this be funny? And we're like, the four of us are kind of like, yeah, this is funny. And then it goes in the movie and we're kind of like, I hope the rest of the people think it's funny. But it was just sort of like constant, like, leave no stone unturned.
It's redlining the whole time. That's the thing. Once it gets in, it doesn't let up. So this film, it's produced by Legendary.
Yes.
And so Legendary is obviously, they're behind some of the biggest franchises in IP. Dark Knight, Godzilla, Dune, The Toxic Avenger.
Right,
At what point did they read the script and were they ever like, whoa, butt guts? No.
No, not at all. No, not at all. In fact, it was kind of like, not literally, do you have any more butt guts, but like, what else? It was really like, okay, so for butt guts, we were like late in there's a shot in the movie where like he grabs his hand up the guy's butt in the restaurant and he pulls his guts out. So we call it butt guts. It's pretty straightforward.
For those that weren't aware of butt guts.
And it was kind of late in post-production, and Legendary very kindly was like, hey man, we think there might be some room for some extra shots in the movie. Would you like something? And I thought, like, yes, this will be cool. We'll do a thing where Toxie he's gonna rip a guy's pants off, and and in my mind he was gonna do something with the mop, and one of the assistant editors was like, and pull his guts out of his butt? And I was like, that is what it's gonna be. And then this was at about like 1:00 a.m. I'm sending an email to the producers with the text line, butt guts. Toxie pulls guts out of butts. And they were like, yeah, man, let's go. It was not like, oh, this is it was just kind of like all in service of like what's gonna be the funnest thing for people, and everybody was down to party.
A bit of whiplash. So we go from butt guts. There isn't this, despite all of this and the madcap mayhem, there is still a real emotional core. There's a heart in this film between the father and son relationship, and it feels that that's really important. It's important to the film, because otherwise it's so gonzo. And to pull it back like that, I mean, that's obviously, that was an important thread that you wanted to ride through this, right?
For sure. I mean, it was, obviously a lot of the things, a cackling gang of bad guys that he battles and a big corporate bad guy. There's a lot of stuff from the original that we kind of, not literally, but we were bringing, versions of that into this one. But in the original, he was a teenager and he was trying to get laid. He was trying to get in with like the cool kids at school. And it was just sort of like, it wasn't really what I wanted to do with it, but there was something about like a dad having a hard time connecting with his kids that seemed appropriate. And so that was sort of the inside of all of the blood and guts and foolishness, like that was sort of the emotional core that we tried to bring in. And so we got very lucky with someone like Jacob who could play the kid and sort of have this, with a very short amount of screen time, it's like 3 scenes, have a real seeming relationship with the dad that all the rest of the craziness sort of hinges on.
How long was it? You say 3 scenes, but how long was the shoot itself?
Oh boy, the shoot was 6 weeks, 7, 8 weeks, something like that.
And what was, I mean, the film is crazy, but was there a moment on set, what was the craziest moment when you were just like, I cannot believe this is happening?
When people talk about the craziest moment, like it's sort of like you want to say like, well, I was parachuting and there was crocodiles or something. But no, it was the first day of shooting, and it's very simple. Peter walks across the stage. He's in the basement of the factory where he works, and a security guard walks by and says hello. It's the very first day of shooting. This beautiful set that Alex Cameron, the production designer, had made. It's beautifully shot by Dana Gonzalez, the DP, and it's Peter Dinklage, a movie star, in the foreground, and the security guard in the background walking by is this guy named Chris, who I went to kindergarten with, and he was the guy that I saw Toxic Avenger with in the 6th grade.
Awesome.
I mean, he was the guy that we were like, oh, dude, we should fucking make movies like this, man. And him, Jeremy Saulnier, and myself were in this group making movies ripping off this type of stuff. So all of a sudden we're in Europe and there's this amazing set. There's dozens of extras. There's many dozens of crew people standing around waiting for me to tell them something to do. Peter Dinklage, my buddy Chris is walking by in the background, and it's sort of like, what the fuck is that? How, to circle back to let's say, kindly 2 decades, 3 or 4 decades, but anyways, it was a long time ago, and here we are. And that was, you want to talk about craziest, and the hair on my arms standing up, that was the most surreal moment. I was like, how the fuck did I end up here, man?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
You did. And coming back around, Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah.
So, I'll get into the next question, but at what point did you meet with him? Was that like, I have to go kiss the ring? This is the guy? Like, how was that?
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't like kiss the ring. It was like, oh my God, this is the guy that started the whole thing. I mean, really, like, when we saw that movie, we were stealing a lot of the sensibility, the laughs, and the juvenile sensibility. I say that with nothing but love, obviously, but it's sort of like there was a sensibility that we were stealing, but also what we didn't know at the time was him, what he did with Toxic Avenger. We were kind of like, oh, these guys just, they went out and picked up a camera and made a movie in their backyard with like their friends, and that was very inspirational. So getting to meet him was more about that than like the jokes or the character or anything like that. All of that was important, certainly, but it was kind of like I didn't even have a word for it. What is independent filmmaking? It's like, oh, you can like just go grab a camera and do it, and it'll be rough around the edges, but it'll be fun and it'll be cool. And that's what I talked to him about. And that's what I really wanted to have him in the movie to be kind of like, you know, just kind of like, you know, tongue in cheek. He's giving me a hard time about like, you didn't do a good job.
Yeah. Well, it's so awesome because earlier in the film, we see you in the film. You get your Hitchcock moment in. You suck.
Yes, and the whole reason I was in there was so that you would know that Dennis, that character, was present, so that when he, at the end, can have a moment with Lloyd. It was sort of like, how does the Lloyd cameo work? And I was like, we have to see this guy going boo the whole movie, so that at the end, when he's going yes, and Lloyd's like, no, boo, then like, that's the joke, is that he's like, nah, man, you fucked it up. But but Lloyd could not have been kinder, and was just like, you know, he was in the process the whole time. He was emailing. He had a lot of suggestions, like, you should suffocate this person by sitting on their face with their butt. That is very cool, dude. We don't have the scheduled days for that, but we will maybe in the next one. He had a lot of cool ideas, and was very gracious, and was just throughout the whole thing was like, here's what I think. Also at the same time, it's y'all's movie, and you do what you want with it. Very, very supportive and gracious.
This generosity that he has, which he has had throughout his entire career. It's so funny. Earlier in the day, we had we did this marathon salute to Roger Corman, and Roger Corman was here, and we had a panel with Ron Howard and Joe Dante. There were like 5 or 6 guys. Mick Garrison, it was people that had worked with him throughout his career. And Corman, he put all these people on, and it was the same kind of mentality that Kaufman had. It was like, just shoot it, like you'll get it. Just keep filming, you'll get there. From Corman to Kaufman, and now to you, like there's really something in that independent punk sensibility of like making the film. And then to have him at the end, that's like the Stan Lee moment. And that was the point where it's like, oh yeah, you've just completely subverted the superhero genre with this. Was that always an intent? Where you're like, I'm gonna make my version of this, and we're gonna fuck with these Marvel guys.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, I dig what you're saying, but it was just, I wanted to do a comedy. Like, we were really, like, from the early point, we were talking about the Zaz movies. You know, we were talking about, like, Police Squad and Airplane and Top Secret and stuff like that, and we kind of felt like whatever superhero or vigilante or crime, but like whatever the other stuff would sort of fall after that, but mainly it was just about jokes.
Yeah.
And wanting it to be sort of a rock and roll crowd pleaser first and foremost, and then anything that falls into that, whether it's superhero stuff or vigilante stuff or whatever it is, that's cool too. But mainly we just wanted it to be funny.
And you talk about rock and roll. As we walked into the theater tonight, you programmed a playlist.
Sure.
That's like, it's Iggy, it's John Spencer's in there, there's the Ramones, like it's pretty punk rock. But then at the end of the film, you come back to ABC and The Look of Love, and I'm like, total whiplash. The meaning of music for you, it feels really important.
It does.
Just in the making of the film, in the sensibilities you bring to this. You want to just tell us about that real quick?
Well, just like the music is a huge part of it. The ABC was actually Alex's idea, and it was another one of those, like, I don't know if it was intended or not, but he was like, what about this for the end song? And I was like, absolutely. It's like lyrically and musically, it makes all the sense in the world for this kid to have his sort of like moment of victory. It fit very perfectly. All of that stuff is important to me. And when somebody from the crew is like, we're looking for a playlist for the theater, I'm like, let me give you 4,000 songs to program. No, it's just, I wouldn't even know how to answer that. I just wanted to put songs in that I enjoyed that meant something to me.
And then Jesus Lizard, Mr. David Yao, he's in
Yao,
there.
for sure.
So was that a trip working with Yao? I mean, he's a superhero himself.
He is a superhero, but he's also like I was lucky enough to get to work with him on the last movie that I did, and the reason why I cast him in that was because of his live performance, which is very dangerous and scary on one hand, and also very idiotic and funny on the other hand. Like, he's doing both at the same time, and that's what I wanted for him in the first one. And this one, he's a little bit more of a good guy. He's kind of the Obi-Wan Kenobi character in this movie, and it just, as an elder rock and roll statesman, it seemed very appropriate to me. But I do think that one little monologue that he has there where he yells about, like, oh, it's not cool complaining about how you're sad you're dying. It sounds like a Jesus Lizard B-side.
Yeah.
It sounds like one of the tracks that hasn't been released yet.
We love him. Let's take a couple questions from the audience real quick. Yeah, who got any questions? Yeah, gentleman right here in the cap. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious about.
Hi.
I love the movie, but I was curious about the look of the Toxic Avenger. Were you? It's pretty faithful to the original. I was curious, was there any thought of like changing it completely or going like hewing a lot closer to the original? I was just curious how you came to that look specifically.
So the audience question is talk about the look of the Toxic Avenger.
Yeah, good question. We kind of went back and forth. I had a designer named Vanessa Menendez who did the design for it. If y'all have ever seen the movie May, her husband Lucky McKee is. Anyways, I know them, and so I was like, Vanessa, can you draw this for me? And she did a bunch of versions, and the early versions were way more. Let's say like zombie, like flesh peeling off, and like really horrific. And what we did was, at a certain point, we started walking it back and made it more where you could see his face and his humanity, in his face. It was a little less horrific. So we kind of started big and then walked it back. But I think we were looking at. I mean, obviously I love the first one, but I think as far as the look goes, we were looking at the second Toxic Avenger, how the look kind of evolved a little bit. And then also, frankly, the cartoon version, the Toxic Crusaders. Like, I mean, you can see that in sort of the green skin and stuff like that. It was sort of a mix of kind of Toxic Part 2, Toxic Crusaders, and then sort of an original thing with like the black distended eyeball. And that sort of stuff.
And you got the girthing in there as well, which is really important.
Need the girthening. Absolutely.
Okay, question. Gentlemen, on the cap up. Yep.
Love the movie. Off of that question, how did you decide on the sheep, goat man final form for Bob?
Sheep, goat man final form for Bob.
Well, it was, I was, one of the things that I was always drawing on, I mean, in some ways, obviously, but Frankenstein, the old Universal movies was, I think you can see that in the underground lab and stuff like that. So that was definitely there. And initially, it was a little bit more of a Dracula look, where he was going to have kind of like a Nosferatu kind of bald head, but then it sort of seemed like too much of an overlap with Toxie. He was also bald, so we were like, wait, we need to get a hair into this. So then it became more of a Wolfman type thing, and we just kind of went through several versions of it, but it started out more of like a vampire look, and then it became more of like a goat Wolfman type look through several versions.
Okay, someone's waving at the back there. Yes, I see you. Yep.
I just want to see what Jacob Tremblay's Red Zone looks like in the sequel.
Oh, shit. Well, luckily, we've got people that are in charge of whether or not there's going to be a sequel in the audience tonight, so you'll talk to them about that. No, it's going to be very red. It'll be bright red, neon red.
There you go. Over there, yes.
I was wondering about the special effects. It looks like a lot of practical effects. Was there like digital stuff in there as well?
So
Yeah.
special effects, practical versus digital.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of practical stuff. That was one of the things that we talked about very early on, was sort of like, how, what's Toxie gonna be like? And I kind of felt like it's gotta be an actor in a suit, right? Like, I just didn't feel like anybody I wasn't interested, and I didn't think the audience was gonna be interested in like a 15-foot digital. You kind of want to be able to see the you want to see the seams, and you want to see the drips, and you want to see all the tactile ingredients of practical effects. So we tried to lean into that as much as possible. That said, once we got into post-production, we got very lucky, and Phil Tippett's studio came on board, and he was the original master, and he helped us out with some very quick little digital effects, just for quick little moments when people were getting killed. But for the actual character effects, it was sort of like my suggestion, and everybody was totally on board from the beginning that it be very lo-fi, very analog. So that's what we leaned into.
Okay, another question. Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Yeah, if you get a sequel, will you introduce any Toxic Crusaders characters? When do you get a sequel?
I mean, I would love to. It's sort of, to me, it's like the Batman universe or the James Bond universe, where it's just sort of like they can withstand constant reinvention and adding new bad guys, new everything. So to my way of thinking, there is an endless amount of mutant good guys and bad guys that could be incorporated into this. I would love to fuck around with that. I certainly hope so.
Okay, yeah, gentleman right here.
That final boss death, was that multiple Motorhead references?
Final boss death.
How did that overkill scene come together? Was that something you were thinking about for a long time?
Oh, the overkill scene in the festival when they went? I'll tell you the honest to God truth about that, and maybe I'm not supposed to talk about it, but it was originally written to be Mother by Danzig.
On the playlist we were coming in?
It was on the playlist when Danzig was
Oh, here we go. There's a Danzig story coming.
No, it's not a Danzig story, because Danzig himself didn't have, who I love, and let's be clear about that, but they wanted to have control over the editorial content of, and so it was sort of like, well, if you don't dig what we're doing, then like we've got to reshoot it, so it couldn't. And then I'm kind of the philosophy that like whatever it ends up being is what the universe meant it to be. You know, like Indiana Jones. Oh, Tom Selleck. No, man, it was never going to be Tom Selleck. It had to be fucking Harrison Ford. Same thing. Like maybe at some point we thought it was going to be Danzig, but no, it was always meant to be Motorhead. So we had to go through that to get there, but we ended up in the right place.
Little known fact, but the Toxic Avenger, the size of it was actually based on Glenn Danzig. Come on, think about where you are, sir. Yeah, young lady.
So I laughed pretty much the entire time in this movie, and I was wondering what gag, if at all, are you just like such a huge fan of that you were like, this is not a comedy unless this gag comes into the movie?
The gag in the movie, what was one?
I mean, there was a lot of discussion about the final death of Kevin Bacon's character into the car. There was a lot of like, but cars don't work that way. Guys, like, obviously you're not a car guy. This particular model had an engine block that was made out of knives, usually. It was, honestly, that was one of those gags that like we wanted to do when we were little kids, and we did not have the wherewithal. We didn't have the effects or whatever to do it, but we were, you know, as 11-year-olds, we were like, oh yeah, if you put somebody's head in a car engine, it's gonna fucking grind it up. We could never shoot it, but it always stayed in the back of my head, and when it came time to like, we have to come up with a big death for the bad guy, I was like, oh, I got this shit in my back pocket. And then I had to have all those same conversations again, like, but how does it work? Like, just because they turn the car on and it blows its head up, it doesn't matter. It's gross, it's fine.
It is gross, it is fun, it all works. Macon Blair, you've made a goddamn masterpiece of a movie. It with the People's Republic of Beyond Fest. Sincerely, thank you for doing this. You just flew in this morning. It means so much to us. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Mr. Macon Blair.